Mist hung low over the pasture, silver and still, wrapping the land in breath and silence. A girl in a red wool coat stood by the fence, her boots half buried in frost. Beyond the rails, the stallion waited, dark against the pale morning, his mane catching light like threads of fire. He did not move, did not flinch, only watched. Lila Wren tightened her fingers around the worn wood, heart thudding with the kind of fear that feels more like awe. Her mother had told her not to come here, not to stand this close. But something in the stallion's eyes kept her rooted. They weren't wild, not exactly, just lost. The sound of a closing door cracked through the quiet. Clara's voice followed, calm but edged with warning. "Lila." She walked down from the porch, coat drawn tight against the cold. Years of loss had sculpted her posture. Upright, restrained, careful not to reveal the weight she carried. Step back from the fence. Lila obeyed, though not fully. "He's not doing anything," she murmured. Clara's gaze stayed on the horse. "He's a wild one. Don't mistake stillness for safety." Ashfire snorted once, the sound deep and steady. A flake of frost drifted from his muzzle. Lila studied the shape of him, the power under his skin, the quiet tremor in his flanks. Something about the way he stood reminded her of the old photographs in the hall, the ones where her father's horse had looked just as proud. "Come inside," Clara said, softer now. "You'll catch cold." But Lila lingered after her mother turned away. The fog pressed close, the air sharp with pine and earth. She reached into her pocket and drew out the stub of a pencil, sketchbook tucked beneath her arm. Her lines were quick, certain. She traced the stallion's eyes first, then his stance, then the distance between him and her. From a house, faint music drifted through an open window, a record her father used to play when mending saddles. The melody trembled on the wind before fading. Lila paused her drawing, staring at the animal that refused to blink. "You remember him too, don't you?" she whispered. Ashfire shifted, one hoof sinking deeper into frost. His breath clouded and disappeared. When she finally returned to the porch, Clara was waiting with a mug of cocoa, pretending not to have seen the sketchbook tucked beneath her daughter's arm. Their eyes met briefly, two reflections of the same silence neither could name. Later that night, long after the lamps dimmed, Lila opened her window to the moonlight and laid her sketch on the sill. In the distance, the stallion gave a low, quiet whinny, deep as a memory stirring awake. She smiled to herself, the way one does when something impossible begins to feel true. And though the night swallowed every sound, she could have sworn he called her name. Snow fell in slow spirals that morning, muffling the ranch beneath a hush so deep it felt sacred. Lila trudged through the drifts with a basket of apples, her breath hanging in the air like smoke. She stopped at the edge of the paddock, the same place her mother had forbidden her to go. The stallion stood near the far fence, steam curling from his nostrils. For days he had ignored her, but she sensed something different now, a waiting stillness, cautious but curious. She sliced an apple in half and set it on the post. "It's just food," she whispered, as if the words themselves might bridge the space between them. The horse did not move. His eyes caught the pale light, dark pools holding storms and memory. Lila waited, shivering. The wind carried the faint scent of hay and pine sap. Minutes passed before Ashfire took a single step, his hooves pressed into the snow with deliberate grace. Lila's heartbeat quickened, but she stayed still, her gloved hand resting on the fence. The stallion lowered his head, nostrils flaring, and in one swift, quiet motion, he took the slice. The sound was soft, almost reverent. For a moment, they shared the same breath. Behind her, the crunch of footsteps broke the spell. Clara's voice, low but sharp, cut through the air. "What are you doing out here?" Lila turned, guilt written across her face. "He's not dangerous, Mama. He just needed someone to trust him." Clara's expression flickered. Fear disguises anger. "You don't understand what trust can cost." Her tone softened, the edges trembling. "Your father trusted too much." Lila said nothing. The words fell between them like stones in a well, heavy and echoing. That night, when Clara thought her daughter was asleep, she found the sketchbook left open on the kitchen table. Page after page showed the same horse, sometimes restless, sometimes calm, always alone. In one drawing, he stood beside a man in a worn hat, a man who looked unmistakably like her late husband. The sight hollowed her. She closed the book gently, tracing her finger over the pencil lines as if she could smooth the ache from them. In her room, Lila couldn't sleep. She lit the small lantern on her windowsill and opened the folded letter she had found tucked in her father's old coat. The paper smelled of cedar and rain. "If you find something wild and broken, don't turn away," it read. "Sometimes saving it is the only way to save yourself." She looked toward the barn, where a faint light glimmered through the cracks. Snow still fell, slow and forgiving. By dawn, she would be there again, quiet, waiting, believing the letter's words were meant for her. Somewhere beyond the walls, the stallion stirred, lifting his head toward the same unseen promise of morning. The storm began before dawn, a low growl across the valley that grew into something fierce and wild. By the time Clara woke, wind clawed at the shutters and sleet beat against the roof in relentless rhythm. She dressed quickly, her hands trembling as she lit the lantern. The barn door thudded open and shut in the distance, each crash a warning. She knew the sound, knew it too well. The last time a storm like this came, she had lost her husband to it. She ran out into the cold, snow slicing her cheeks, breath burning. The world blurred into shades of white and gray. Inside the paddock, Ashfire reared and struck at the boards, his eyes rolling with panic. The gate latch had come loose, banging wildly in the wind. Clara grabbed for the rope, shouting to calm him, but her voice was swallowed by the storm. Then she saw something that turned her blood to ice. Lila's small red coat near the fence. "Lila!" The word tore through her throat, barely carried by the wind. Her daughter turned, face pale, hair whipped by snow. "He's scared," Lila cried. "I just want to help. Get away from there." Clara stumbled forward, slipping in the mud, every heartbeat a drum of terror. "Do you hear me? Don't move." Ashfire pawed the ground, muscles taut as wire. Lila stood her ground, trembling but still. Slowly, she raised her hand, the same gesture she practiced in quiet mornings when no one watched. The stallion froze. His chest heaved, steam rising from his body. For a moment, the storm seemed to pause around them, holding its breath. Clara stopped where she was, afraid to break the fragile peace forming before her eyes. The horse's ears flicked, his great head lowering inch by inch until his muzzle brushed Lila's palm. The sight struck Clara like lightning. Fear, awe, and love tangled into something wordless. Then the gate splintered. Wood cracked, iron screamed. Lila slipped backward, her boot catching in the mud. Clara lunged, catching her by the arm, pulling her close. The stallion reared again, hooves striking air, but instead of turning away, he swung around them, circling with fierce precision, as if guarding rather than threatening. Snow and wind wrapped them all in a furious white blur. When it finally broke, the silence felt unreal. The horse stood still beside them, sides heaving, eyes calm. Clara held Lila close, unable to speak. "He didn't hurt us," Lila whispered into her coat. "He was just afraid." Clara looked at the stallion, seeing her husband's courage reflected in that dark, steady gaze. The storm eased into drizzle, a thin light cutting through the clouds. For the first time in years, Clara reached out, and the horse didn't pull away. Morning came soft and gold, the storm's ruin glittering under a sky rinsed clean. The barn roof sagged, fences splintered, but the air carried a quiet promise, the kind that follows survival. Clara stepped outside with Lila close behind, their boots sinking into the thawing earth. Ashfire grazed near the far end of the pasture, untethered, steam rising from his coat in slow ribbons. He looked up as they approached, no fear left between them, only recognition. Neither spoke at first. The silence was full, gentle. Clara felt the ache in her shoulders ease, the weight of years shifting. She watched her daughter walk ahead, small hand outstretched, and saw her the courage she had lost. When Lila reached the fence, Ashfire came forward, brushing his muzzle against her mittened fingers as though it were the most natural thing in the world. He stayed. Lila whispered, wonder soft in her voice. Clara nodded. Because he trusts you now. They worked through the morning, repairing what the storm had broken. The rhythm of their movements, passing nails, lifting boards, sharing quiet smiles, felt like language returning. Clara no longer flinched at the stallion's presence. She welcomed it. Each sound, the creak of wood, the rustle of his mane, wove itself into the fabric of their healing. When the work was done, Lila brought out the folded letter. Its edges were worn from being read too often. He wrote about saving something wild. She said, maybe he meant both of us. Clara took the letter, eyes tracing her late husband's handwriting one last time. The ink had faded, but the message hadn't. She tied it to the fence post where the stallion first stood on that misted morning, letting the wind tug at its corners. He'd be proud, she murmured. They opened the paddock gate together. For a long moment, Ashfire only watched them. Then, with a soft snort, he stepped forward. Snow crunched under his hooves as he crossed the open field, pausing once to look back. His mane caught the sunlight, turning him into something almost mythic, half flame, half memory. Then he was gone, cresting the ridge and disappearing into the pale distance. Lila pressed closer to her mother. Will he come back? Clara smiled faintly. Maybe, or maybe he just needed us to let him go. The wind carried the faint rustle of paper, the letter fluttering against the post like a heartbeat. Lila opened her sketchbook and drew the empty pasture, the rising hills, the horizon where the stallion had vanished. Beneath it, she wrote one line in careful pencil strokes. He found his way home. As the sun dipped low, Clara set a hand on her daughter's shoulder, warmth settling where grief had lived. For the first time in years, she exhaled without pain, and from far off, carried on the wind, came a single, distant whinny, soft, certain, like a promise kept.